Madam Speaker, I rise to update this August House on the outcome of the 44th annual meeting of the Pacific Island Law Officers Network, what is commonly known as PILON, held from the 28th to the 30th of October 2025 at APEC Halls in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. PILON is more than a professional gathering. It is a family of Pacific law officers, of Attorney Generals, Solicitor Generals, Director of Public Prosecutions, and senior legal leaders, united by a shared purpose to strengthen justice, uphold the rule of law, and ensure our people are protected by systems that are fair, modern, and responsive. This year, the government of Papua New Guinea hosted the gathering under the championship of Dr. Eric Kawa, who succeeded Fiji's own Solicitor General, Ropate Green Lomabatu. The Honorable James Marape, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, opened the meeting reminding participants that the law must always remain a servant of the people. He spoke passionately about the need to address gender-based violence, corruption, cybercrime, environmental harm, and he challenged them to ensure that Pacific laws reflect Pacific values, not foreign templates. Over the 3 days, discussions were rich, honest, and forward-looking. PILON continues to prioritize 4 major areas: combating SGBV, addressing corruption, tackling cybercrime, and strengthening legislative drafting. Madam Speaker, Fiji's progress in modernizing its cybercrime laws and aligned with the Budapest Convention was acknowledged. Fiji remains active in the Cybercrime Working Group, which is developing a regional cybercrime legislation implementation handbook. Further meetings are planned for 2026. The Working Group's 2026 work plan was endorsed in that meeting. I wish to highlight an achievement that holds deep significance for Fiji and the region. In September, the Office of the Attorney General, through our Legislative Drafting Division, co-organized the first ever Pacific Legislative Drafters Steering Committee conference in partnership with PILON, with support from the Australian Attorney General's Department. Fiji proudly hosted this historical gathering from the 9th to 11th of September at Tanwa International Hotel in Nandi under the powerful theme, Developing Laws in the Pacific, by the Pacific, for the Pacific. This conference marked a turning point. For decades, Pacific countries relied heavily on external legislative models. Through this first meeting, we asserted ownership of our legal identity. We affirmed that Pacific nations can draw laws that speak our language, reflect our realities, and uphold our values. Madam Speaker, the conference and subsequent 2-day workshop covered important topics, including policy development to legislated outcomes, working with stakeholders for drafting instructions to develop legislation, drafting the Pacific challenges and opportunities, sentences and words in law, and finally, developing core competencies through training, office management, and resources. Legislative drafters from Nauru, Tonga, Solomon Islands, Samoa, Vanuatu, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Federal States of Micronesia, the Republic of Marshall Islands, Tokelau, Fiji, as well as PILON and the Australian Attorney General participated. Participants engaged with senior drafters from New Zealand Parliamentary Council, the Australian Federal Office of Parliamentary Counsel, and the Commonwealth Association of Legislative Council, and the Honourable Attorney General of Tonga. Madam Casey Nicholson, Chief Parliamentary Counsel and Chief Executive of New Zealand Parliamentary Council, recently appointed to King Council, also delivered keynote remarks. The unity and energy during the conference reaffirmed that Pacific legal officers are contributors and innovators, shaping the legal future grounded in our identity. Madam Speaker, Fiji's leadership was further recognized through the Pacific Legislative Drafters Committee. The conference reinforce the importance of Pacific-driven lawmaking rooted in our cultural and linguistic diversity. Updates were received from the working group, including trauma-informed initiatives, a regional webinar series on interviewing child witnesses, and the revival of Witness Support Officers Network. The Group 2026 work plan was also endorsed. Under Fiji's championship, the following achievements were recorded. 1. The publication of the first PLDC annual circular, highlighting Micronesia drafters with the Melanesian edition underway. 2. Continued implementation of the regional guidelines for prosecutors and witness support officers. And 3. Fiji's hosting of the regional asset seizure and confiscation workshop in February 2025 with 15 PILON member countries. Madam Speaker, I wish to acknowledge the important work between the Fiji government and the Office of the Attorney General and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, what is normally called UNODC, in developing Fiji's Mutual Legal Assistance Manual and supplementary protocols. These tools will support central authorities, prosecutors, investigators, and agencies involved in international cooperation. As transnational crime becomes more sophisticated, strong MLA procedures are essential. The manual will provide clarity on processes, timelines, legal requirements, and best practices, enabling Fiji to meet its obligation under the international conventions and support domestic investigations. It also prepares Fiji for APG mutual evaluation next year. Fiji also co-hosted a regional workshop on asset seizure and confiscation in Nadi with the UNODC and the Australian Attorney General's Department. 27 prosecutors, law enforcement officers, and legal officers attended from 15 PILON member countries. These regional engagements highlight that no jurisdiction can combat transnational crimes alone. Strengthening networks, harmonizing processes, and building capacity is essential for regional safety. Fiji remains committed to deepening cooperation, enhancing institutional capacity, and ensuring that our systems are equipped to address modern transnational and cyber-enabled crime. Madam Speaker, Fiji also draws inspiration from the recent ICJ advisory opinion, which affirms that states have binding obligation to prevent climate harm and may be held accountable if they fail to do so. This principle extends to the digital realm. Just as states must prevent climate harm, they must also protect human rights in a cyberspace. This is especially important for Fiji as we expand digital services. Greater connectivity brings greater exposure to cyber risk. This issue has also been raised by the Pacific nations on the UN Open-Ended Working Group on ICT. Fiji, through the Office of the Attorney General, is developing a national position paper on international law in cyberspace. The ICJ opinion strengthens our approach and informs our legal direction. It reminds us that whether in physical or digital world, states must act with responsibility, foresight, and commitment. Members also discussed strengthening law and justice institutions, improving access to justice, enhancing digital evidence systems, and protecting vulnerable witnesses. Fiji shared updates on reforms under the law and justice sector roadmap. PILON members agreed to adopt a new strategic plan for 2027 to 2029, with discussion continuing to 2026 on working group consolidation and elevating climate change as a strategic priority. The next annual meeting will be co-hosted by Tuvalu in Australia in 2026, followed by Solomon Islands in 2027 and Niue in 2028. Madam Speaker, Fiji remains deeply committed to PILON. Law and justice forms the pillars of peace, stability, and progress in our region. Through PILON, we strengthen institutions, we uphold integrity, and we ensure justice is never out of reach for any Pacific Islander. Fiji stands ready to continue leading, supporting, and uplifting the Pacific legal community. Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Siromi Turaga for your ministerial statement.